We're starting the meeting a little bit late. We are ready to go now. And I'm going to start the meeting by actually turning it over to our deputy who has a new presentation. And so we'll start with that new presentation and then we'll continue conversations from yesterday. And then there are a couple of items I do want to address, and I don't know if other board members have other things to address, but I'm going to turn it over now. Linda, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Commissioner LeBron. This is a relatively short presentation, and I think Kelly is putting it up, but it is in response to some of the concerns raised last night, and we did spend today trying to come up with a solution. So if you go to the next slide, I would like to talk about Edison and Franklin for a moment, because there were concerns raised about those two in particular, and I want to first talk about Edison. So you will see in 1920, according to the budget book that you all have, we have 6 assistant principals now. For 2021. We had projected a reduction of 2 assistant principals. We certainly understand the concerns, so we worked with the chiefs and staff today to figure out a solution for that. We are at a position to be able to restore 1 AP, so we will be back to 5 in that building. And in order to do so, we have looked at some grant dollars, and we will take 2 existing positions that can legitimately be moved half each into grant dollars to free up some general fund dollars to support this AP. So we will be restoring 1 at Edison. As far as Franklin Upper, in 1920, we had 3 assistant principals assigned to Franklin Upper. And we are going to, for next year, shift an AP from School 3, where the projected enrollment for next year is 250 students. They were projected to get 2 APs for next year. We're going to move 1 of them to Franklin Upper. So the that should be the next bullet should be the 2021 allocation will now total 4 assistant principal positions. So there are 2 changes in our assistant principals. 1 is an add at Edison, 1 is a shift at Franklin Upper. I do want to go back and adjust the pay, talk about the pay freeze issue that we talked about last night and update the numbers, because the numbers that we had presented to you actually included the exempt as well as board members. And this is the totality of savings from each of the groups by doing a pay freeze for 2021. Total is 165,822 across those 4 groupings. And then lastly, I just wanted to follow up on something that we have been working on very hard. You have received Carlos Garcia's email with some things that we are going to prompt out of central office as far as preparing for ceremonies and some things that we can do virtually. I understand the concerns about going live, and we will continue to work on a live option. Perhaps it's a drive-by or drive-through option, but we also wanted to give you an update on some other things that we're working on to really try and make this graduation special, even in light of COVID. And Glenn Vanderwater's on the phone. I just want to talk to him briefly and have him introduce some of the things that he is working on out of his department. Glenn?
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the time. So we have been trying to come up with solutions to recognize our 2020 graduates this year for all high schools across the entire district. And in partnering with Tony Jackson from Panther Printing and our own print shop, we came up with some ideas of creating some very large banners that would be hung out in front of each of the schools, congratulating the 2020 grads, while also wrapping central office in the same type banners, so that schools like Edison that don't have a whole lot of neighborhood traffic, there'll be some sort of centralized location where kids can see some support for all their efforts over the years. I'd like to recognize, I talked about Panther Printing. Tony from Panther Printing has offered for free door signs for all of our seniors. So he would print those out in color, and we would provide each of the schools across the district the opportunity to get door signs, and in collaboration with that, or in addition to that, I should say, we'd be putting up yard signs and potentially stickers and things like that, bumper stickers for our kids. And those are just some early ideas. We could if we did have an opportunity to do something out in the public and celebrate our kids, we could take those banners and bring them to an area that was deemed safe, but we could also reutilize those banners from central office and the buildings. As it was, well, we haven't talked about yet, but we're talking about also virtual graduation ceremonies. Carlos Garcia really had some great ideas, our communications chief, as to some things that we could do to recognize our students virtually if doing something face-to-face was not possible. And you can see on the boards, on the PowerPoint slide, a couple examples of what the banners and yard signs might look like. Next slide, please.
I think that's it, Glenn.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep, thank
good.
you.
right.
And I just want to say that this is, we're going to continue to talk about this over the next few days. I know the chiefs are on the phone. I'm sure the principals are also listening in. So we will continue to try and generate more ideas. We appreciate your input. And again, our goal is to make this special. And if we can indeed get a live component in this, we will do so. But it'll be a combination of things to try and make up for the fact that we're ending school in this very strange format. But I think we've got a good start, and we hope you appreciate that. We'll continue to work on it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. President?
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Yeah.
I'm chairing the
Linda,
meeting.
I may have asked this question before, but I can't recall what the response was. What are some of our students feeling around COVID and not being able to graduate in a traditional way? And what's some of the thoughts around there? And have we asked our students, some of our students, what they would like to see in terms of a virtual graduation?
So I have some chiefs on the phone or on the line. I don't know if any of them would like to speak to that specific question. Vice President Elliott, it's a great question, and perhaps they can offer some of their insights.
Thank you.
Linda, I could share. I've had several conversations with Jacob over at Edison, and the feedback that he has been getting is that the students would like to be able to do something where they can dress up, put on their cap and gowns, and be recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to go to President White and then Commissioner.
Yes, a couple things. I'm glad, Linda, you were on the line when we were talking about it before we went on air about graduation. I know a number of board members, myself included, would like to see some kind of, if it's possible, and I don't know that it would be, some kind of physical participation in graduation, whether that's someone even remarked, you know, you guys distributed a significant number of laptops and so forth, Chromebooks, and could we not try something like that in the larger schools that have drive around parking ramps for buses? So I really would hope we could probably make some arrangements for that sort of thing to happen, even if it just means people being in cars, dressing up, getting in their cars and driving through, and having Jacob present them a diploma, and the board member who's there also supporting that. So a number of us have been thinking about that. Again, I don't know if logistically it's possible, but I think there are some complications of that, because, okay, so you want students to take pictures, they'll want to take pictures, they'll want to congregate. We would have to make certain that that did not happen. But, you know, as Commissioner Shepard said to me a few moments ago, everything is possible. So I'm hoping you guys give that some serious consideration. The other thing that I wanted to say in terms of graduation, it's not topical right now, but Linda, as you know, with past superintendents, we've always kept the track of our graduation rate. At some point in advance of that, I know we got an update from after the last Regents exam. I would like for your team to let us have a sense, particularly once we see ourselves out of this budget deliberation process. I'd like for you all to give us an update on where we're at in terms of what we anticipate the graduation rate might be. And I realize it's going to be difficult to calculate that because we're in sort of a place that we've never had been in before, but I would appreciate an update. And then finally, back to the budget, it is good to hear that the pay freeze, which was a suggestion of Commissioner LeBron, could net $165,000. I'm wondering, do you all have, I assume that's unspoken for money at this particular time. Doesn't sound like the changes that you've recently made are not connected with that. And if they're not, have we thought about where that 165 would go? I hate to spend money that was just made available, but there was, I think, some consensus on the board that, and I know we had reached sort of an impasse, but the bilingual position on cabinet. I know you all, and I thought this was a brilliant compromise. You added a director, which I think was really necessary. So the ESOL and the ELLs now have 2 boots on the ground. But I still think a powerful argument could be made for creating a cabinet level position. And I realize I'm not drawing any line in the sand over that. I'm prepared to vote on the budget, but I'm wondering, particularly with the next superintendent, is that 165,000 spoken for?
It is actually, and I'm going to have Bob address this, because if you recall our earlier projections, we did not think that those projections included the exempt and board members, but in fact they did. So that money has already been swept. And Bob, you might want to jump in there.
It really excluded just the board. We had accounted for the 3 major dollar amounts: SEG, BEG, and exempts. So it's only a minor net.
Okay. Commissioner LeBron, I'm set.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
First slide about the APs made me realize Northeast is losing the AP, and I didn't know that some of the interim health students were going to be going over there. I thought the interim health students were going to all city. That was my understanding on the proposal. But it's been brought to my attention that they're actually getting about 50 or 60 students, and 40% of those 8-9s are special ed. I would hate to see them lose resources. In that situation there, I really feel like they need some additional resources. And in the original proposal, when we said we was trying to go along with it, we always had spoke on resources following the students, not a lack of resources where the students went. So I just had to speak on Northeast. It's a really tough situation over there with the IEPs that they already have, with the 8-9 and going into 10. And then we're maybe 40 or 50 more students from interim health. So there's a concern in the community about the stability of that institution.
So we will try and get you, Commissioner Adams, the actual numbers of the students that would be going to all city versus Northeast. Let us get the actual numbers, and then we can certainly look at it more if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, from your presentation, Deputy Quick, I think it was the first slide on the slide on the salary reductions. You listed board member pay freeze, which I'm totally on board with if that's the will of the body. But now we do have a resolution, not a policy, but a resolution that governs this, that ties our salary to 75% of a city council member salary. So if we were to waive our salary, I would ask that the section 1 or the policy section of the book, whichever appropriate, and in the transmittal letter, call out a board salary freeze, waiving the resolution, and I can't cite the resolution number, and that like our policy waiver on managed choice, that when we approve the budget, that we explicitly acknowledge in an additional resolve statement that we're waiving that that resolution that ties our salary to city council. But in a transmittal letter, I ask that we encourage city council to do likewise, at least freeze their own pay. They're going to have financial issues to deal with, and we're essentially, by virtue of the fact that we have to submit our budget to them, we're leading the way, whether we want to or not. But then here comes the question, and this is to my colleagues. If city council decides to go the next step further and actually reduce their salary rather than freeze it, and I know it's highly hypothetical, but let's suppose that happens. How would we want to word the resolved statement? Do we want to accept a pay reduction, not just a freeze, but a reduction, if in fact city council reduces their salary? We'd have to, I think we should be prepared to do that, but it matters how we word the language that might waive the resolution that ties our salary to city council.
Are you done, Commissioner Powell?
I'm looking for feedback on that.
Well, Commissioner LeBron?
President White, and I know that Commissioner Shepherd had her hand up too. But,
oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Commissioner Shepherd, I think she's not, oh, here she is.
I was going to ask a follow-up to what Commissioner Adams had brought up in regards to Northeast, Northwest, but I was going to wait. That's what I put my hand on.
So, yes. So my response to that is, I don't know what city council is going to do. I didn't hear that they were going to do anything, including a freeze, but perhaps they are. I think the freeze is what we should be focusing on. And if they decide to further reduce their salaries, we could stay locked in at where we're at, because Commissioner Powell, you probably know this better than I do, but it's set at the time that they set the salary. So we wouldn't have to readjust our salaries just because they readjusted theirs. We've already frozen it at the point, at the benchmark that they had set their salaries at, and we're 75% of that. They go ahead and reduce their salaries. I think we could consider that at that time. I don't know that we have to, if there's any legal reason to get out ahead of that. And again, just to be honest, I don't know what the reduction would be, but whatever savings we experience, it's not going to be that significant. So I guess my position is, I'm good with the freeze. I think this is an appropriate response. Perhaps people might see us as leading by example. Perhaps city council might freeze theirs. Perhaps they won't. Perhaps they might reduce theirs. Perhaps they won't. I just think we've made a statement about what we want to do, and if we have to do something different later on, we can deal with that when it happens.
I'm not sure if there's anyone else who wants to speak to that point, but I follow what you're saying, President White. And so if the resolved statement in our budget adoption is a straightforward waiving the resolution, a resolution tying our pay to city council and holding our salaries flat for the year 2021, that if it were worded like that, then no matter what city council does, ours would then remain flat. It would not, that language would not leave room for us to reduce our salary if in fact city council reduced theirs. Highly unlikely scenario, but it's would be pretty straightforward resolution language. And we should make sure that that kind of language is in the resolution to adopt their budget, if in fact everybody is cool with freezing their salaries. Beatrice,
Sorry, I'm over here talking. I was muted. I apologize. So a couple of points. The salary freeze for this group, the SEG and BG group, was originally presented as a savings of $200,000. It was already decided a while ago. In the very beginning of Terry's presentations around the budget, he specifically mentioned this, and he brought it up again as part of the new deficit, COVID-19 related. So I just wanted to understand where the 165 came from today, or 185 that was just presented. The number today, in the last PowerPoint, it was presented as $200,000, and exempt employees were not included.
Always round up, Commissioner. That's just something I did in the presentation, just to make it a cool, even 200,000. And while it may not have stated exempts, that was the intent when we did the math back then.
Okay. A couple of things. So related to this budget, but before I get to the presentation piece of it, yesterday I was talking about uncertified staff supervising certified staff, and I was informed that there is nothing in terms of writing or legalities around that. But I did do some follow-up today, and my understanding is that in the past, ASAR has had an issue with this because of the evaluation. So they've had an issue with non-certified staff evaluating certified staff. And so I'm going to make a request right now for administration to follow up with ASAR about putting that in writing, that they are okay with it. And I would like that in writing so that if it happens again in the future with another person who's not certified, supervising a certified staff, that it doesn't come up again as an issue. Because in the past, ASAR has fought us on doing this type of practice. And so they're okay with it. I just want to have it in writing, because our practices should really be standard across the board. And if it's okay for one individual, it should be okay for another coming in. So I just want to put that out there and make that request. I would like to give an update on RIA. And so this board, some of the board leadership, myself, President White, and Vice President Commissioner Elliott, who also serves as the board liaison for RIA, had a meeting with administration last Friday. And there was some back and forth, but the resolve was that we would email the state and ask the state for support to RIA to allow them to transition the K through 6th grade kids and give us a year to make that transition. And the state came back and replied and said no. So I just want to be clear that we as a board wanted to support RIA in that transition and give them the year to make that transition. We recognize that because we're in COVID-19 and the students are not in school right now, and that there's a language barrier that needs to be addressed, multiple languages spoken. Our request was to allow us the time to transition kids back to school in September, allow parents to understand what was happening, why it was happening, what choices that they had. And so I just want to put that out there to the community, that our hands are really tied as a board and what we can do to move forward based on the last recommendation, response from the state. And it's unfortunate, but we do also have to follow what the state tells us in terms of how to proceed regarding that situation. The other piece I want to mention is that in the last couple of days, there have been multiple updated presentations and positions reinstated. And what administration for me has failed to do and ignore is that the board was supporting the executive director of multilingual languages and foreign studies. So a director of ESO is not even it's not even language that the state uses anymore to identify or discuss multiple language students. So let me put that out there too. So stating that we're gonna reinstate a director of ESO is not good enough for me. And it does not support multi-language learners. And, you know, I personally am definitely feeling some kind of way, being bilingual myself, that I have to fight and push this hard to support multi-language learners having an executive director and the structure needed to support all of our schools. So this individual does not just support one school, it supports all MLL students across the district. And with the transition of RIA now more than ever, we're going to need that support. And I do feel that administration has ignored the request to put that position in and push their agenda to keep a chief of IT. And I just want to put that on the record because as it stands right now, I will not be voting on this budget and I will not support it. And I do not care that I'm the chair of finance. I just cannot support that. And it's infuriating to me that I have to constantly fight for multi-language learners. So just not my bilingual peoples, all people that speak a different language. And it's infuriating. And I want to put that out there. The other piece is, speaking of multi-language learners and bilingual, is that this board passed a resolution for Monroe to be split into upper and lower. And there is no plan yet in place that this board has seen on how that transition is going to move forward. And many people may not realize, but Monroe is one of our largest bilingual high schools in the county, I would say, but definitely in the city school district. And there is no plan. And I'm asking that the board consider pulling back that resolution and allowing a year for that transition so that we can be presented with an actual plan. Because what I don't want to support is having the same thing that happened to the Bilingual Academy occur. And that is putting things together with no actual plans, patching it, meal piecing it, and then not being successful. And the people that end up suffering are really our children. And so I would like the board to consider doing a resolution that rescinds that resolution and putting it with a year date, a year from now, to make that implementation happen with a plan in place and the proper supports. President White, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just, I think you made a number of valid points, legitimate points. I just don't know if we can resolve them today. Like, for example, the Monroe, the proposal to have an upper and lower houses at Monroe. I too, along with the rest of our colleagues, are waiting for the plan for that. And there may be one, or there may be one in the works that was in the works, but because our staff at central office has been redirected in so many different directions, and Mr. Dade left, perhaps it's not as far along as anybody would want to be. I think that the inquiry, though, is a good one. And after Thursday, we should turn our attention to having that question answered. What is the plan, and can it possibly be implemented here? So, but again, I don't know that today is the day to talk about that, but that is an important issue. I did just want to say, with respect to the executive director of multilingual studies, I do support the creation of that. I have been advocating for that, but at a certain point in time, you have to realize that you have to. There's a whole budget here, and I do recognize, and I'll say more about it tomorrow. I think that the Deputy Superintendent Quick has done an admirable job, along with her team, of moving various interests, legitimate interests that the board has had. And she has done a yeoman's job at putting together a budget that probably 3 weeks ago, Terry Dade was saying could not happen. And many people who perhaps aren't the most confident about the district would have said, oh, they're never going to be able to pass a budget, particularly without a superintendent. Well, I believe tomorrow we will prove them wrong. It won't be a perfect budget. There are things that I, for example, like the executive director of multilingual studies, I would like to have seen in that budget. But to you and to those folks that want that, I would say tomorrow is another day. Friday is another day. We perhaps will have a new superintendent. We will have a new superintendent in the foreseeable future. Budgets can be amended. I just think that like I said to somebody recently, that the two directors, on the ground people is a real addition. And if you can add an executive director to that, and I see, the thing is, I see you shaking your head, Commissioner LeBron, but I just haven't given up. We were at a retreat a couple months ago, and I said, I'm just not the guy, and I know I have colleagues that are the same way. I'm just not the person to give up. Maybe it won't happen in tomorrow's vote, but I firmly believe that position is critical to the development of this district, and I'm not gonna give up advocating for that. And we'll have, although we had Deputy Superintendent Quick and her team do a great job at putting this budget together, that's not the end of the battle. We'll probably have, in short order, maybe sooner than later, a new superintendent, and we'll talk to him or her about this very important critical role. So I get your frustration, but for me, and I realize, obviously, we're different people, there's a lot of good stuff in this budget. And because I can advocate for that, the creation of that role, or the re-implementation of that role, I can advocate for that on Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm on record. This isn't the first time I've advocated for that role, but I don't think it'll happen tomorrow. But that doesn't mean it can't happen on Friday or on Monday or on Tuesday. And I'm committing to you. Well, should have, there's old phrase, should have, could have, would have. It should have. I agree. It should have. I advocated for that. But tomorrow and Friday, I'm saying Friday because that's the day after we, knock on wood, we'll pass the budget. It's another day. And this is an important, I'm in total agreement with you, and I'm sure there are other colleagues are too. We will just have to make that battle because there are a whole lot of other good stuff that addresses a lot of other issues that we have in this budget that is being proposed. So I hear you. I'm just saying to you and I know you're not gonna, I hear you're saying you're not gonna vote for this budget, but I am, but I'm also saying to you and others that I am fully supportive of the creation of that, but it's just the conversation is gonna be with somebody different. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Vice President Elliott.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to lend my voice with yours, Commissioner LeBron, around RIA. We were all just so disappointed on the decision from the state. It's just so much good work that goes on over in that community in terms of its students, in terms of with the families, and additionally the partnerships that have been created over there for the last 10 years or so. Mayor has done an amazing job of forming those relationships and providing RIA as a safe haven for those students, and to have the state to come in and, my words, rip that apart without giving us more of an opportunity to have the time to really have conversations with those families over there, and to really think through how this can be a win-win for our students as well. And it just doesn't appear that the state is willing for it to be a win-win. It's almost as if it's their way or the highway. And those people are not on the front lines, not there on a daily basis to see the kind of support that our students and families receive over there. I tend to believe that it was a lot of the disconnect had to do with central office and a lack of, and I'm not talking about under this particular leadership per se, but there was just not the kind of collaboration with the building and with central office that I think it should have been. There seemed to have been some very simple things that should have been done, and from the part of central office in collaboration with the building, and I believe that those things were in large part our fault, and our fault meaning central office. Now, many of the students perhaps should have moved on to transition to other schools, but you cannot beat the kind of community that we would love all our schools to have, and the hard work that was indeed going on over at RIA. And so I am tremendously disappointed about the decision that the state made, particularly not giving us another year for transition and to develop some kinds of models that we can use in order to ease those students in over to those schools. Because we know in many instances, in many schools, I hate to admit this, but it's the truth. In many of those schools, these students are going to go lacking, and they're not going to be given the kind of quality attention that they need to be given. And so another year would have helped some mentoring and some professional development for the staff to be able to, and the teachers and the administrators to be able to work with those students so that they can continue to progress as opposed to regress. So I just wanted to share that, my disappointment with the state around that. And I really would have wished that our own team in central office would have been more responsive than they were. And I'm hoping that this is a lesson for our administration in central office to think more critically about the decisions that they're making. So I just wanted to share that and put that so that the community, the RIA community, knows that we really did try to do our best to continue that school for another year as a K through 12 school. So I'm just very disappointed, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Did I freeze up?
Commissioner Powell and then Commissioner Shepherd. You're muted.
Did I freeze up?
No, I'm sorry, I've quite forgotten what I wanted to add to the conversation. Sorry.
Did nobody hear what I said?
No, we heard.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Shepherd. Commissioner Shepherd.
Sorry. Okay, so I wanted to bring up two things. The first one, I'll just go back to what Commissioner Adams talked about in regards to interim health going into Northeast, Northwest. And I know that the administration was going to get back to us with actually how many students. And I know that there's under 100 students that go to interim right now, right? Okay, so what I did want to say is that I know in our previous discussions with Superintendent Dade, that one of my concerns and my colleagues' concerns was the support that was going to be following those students, just because they do need different supports, some more significant than other students, which is okay, we'll handle that. But now with them not going into one location, I do want to make sure that at the very least, if there is not an AP that is added back, that they do get followed with a social worker. Because I know that they are slated to lose social work support over there. And I just wanted to make sure that they at least have a significant concerted effort to address their needs for them going into that building. And I just wanted to add the reason why is because in the Northeast, Northwest building, with those two combined is over 1,000 students. And so we're putting students that have, that need significant supports into that kind of environment with so many students in that building, that I just wanted to make sure that that is going to be addressed because they are slated to lose a social worker over there. So I wanted that to be able to follow them.
So I could briefly address that, Commissioner Shepherd, and I will get the exact numbers, I believe. Of the students at Interim Health, approximately 20 are going to Northeast. The bulk, which is between 40 and 50, will still be going to All City. But we will get you the detail of the information and make sure that sufficient supports follow them to both locations. We had in our answer log to your questions, provided information on the plan at all cities. So we will follow up with that at Northeast as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the second thing I wanted to kind of piggyback off of, I know Commissioner LeBron has been leading the charge on the executive director for bilingual. And so I just wanted to kind of lend where I'm at on that. I am somebody that did support restoring that position. And I just wanted to note that we also discussed restoring our African Americans department and positions over there for a very specific reason, to emphasize the work that we need to have happen there, emphasize the fact that we understand that we have a huge population of Black and African American students that we really want to hone in. And so for me, I believe that that is the same reasoning as to why we need to restore the executive director for bilingual, because I know that executive directors oversee strategic plans, and they really kind of set the direction for the actual department. And I'm concerned that with it being a director position, who is overseeing that and what is the expertise in regards to bringing all of the planning together? That is where I am looking to see that the executive director of bilingual be restored. And I know that we had already stated that was a priority for us. And so if the administration can speak to what the changes are going to be in regards to that, because I do still support our executive director being restored.
Let me briefly address that. So the reason we've shifted from executive directors to directors is twofold. Number one, in an effort to try and reduce saving or have savings at central office, we made the shift. But also, more importantly, the reason for executive directors was because they supervise directors. They will still, as directors, be responsible for working on our corrective action plans and our strategic plans and the other work. They just will not have a level of supervision from executive director to director. In this particular case, they will be side-by-side directors in the department, but still overseeing all of the work as side-by-side directors and not a chain of command from executive director to director.
So then can you explain again who will be overseeing and bringing the entire department together and driving the entire department?
They would fall under the chief academic officer, as all do the T&L staff, the teaching and learning staff, also report up through that same chain of command.
Okay, I'll have follow-up questions because I do want to talk about it in executive session.
President White.
Yes, I wanted to say that the letter that has been referenced regarding RIA, if it's not available, we'll certainly make sure that it's available. The letter that I'm referring to is the letter that Commissioner LeBron referred to. We made a pitch to New York State in the last few days ago to get them that extension that Vice President Elliott spoke of, the extension for transitioning kids children K through 6. And I thought the pitch was a very good one. It was, I could tell you, I spent hours taking input from different people about that letter. There was at least 3 different versions of it. I thought it was a very powerful letter that spoke to some of the points that, for example, Vice President Elliott referred to. But as my colleagues have indicated, it was not successful. I would also ask our staff to make available, accessible to citizens, the state's response. People need to see what we wrote and what the state wrote. But as Commissioner LeBron said—
This is posted on the website, President White. The budget website.
Right. Okay, thank you. So that stuff is available on the website for folks to look at. But I think that is important that folks understand that we put our best foot forward, and the state rejected it. And if you guys remember that case involving the mayor and the whole question about the referendum, the decision by the state Supreme Court judge, Judge Odorizzi, made it very clear that education falls within the province and power and authority of the state. We don't work for the city. We don't even work for ourselves. We are agents of the state. So if the state says to us, after we make this, what I believe to be a good pitch, and as Vice President Elliott says, RIA has a great track record for serving the citizens of this community. And as I understand it, people from across the nation have come to look at that school. But returning to this point about who ultimately is responsible for education in the state of New York, it's the state education departments. So if they tell us we can do something or we cannot do something, that's exactly what we have to do. I don't want people to think that the decision regarding RIA has anything to do with any particular board member or our lack of will to keep that program at least strong in transition for the next year. But the state made its decision. And by the way, if you read the decision, their decision is very thoughtful. It's very comprehensive. Some of us disagree with it, but it's not arbitrary. They have their reasons. And I really would encourage people to read our letter and then their response, and then turn the chapter and figure out what's going to happen next. And I think there are some real possibilities, even in this chapter that we're at with RIA, of turning the page and maybe making something different out of it. And I've discussed that with some of my colleagues. An international school would be absolutely awesome idea. It would take some time to put together. So I don't want people to wallow in this, oh my God, RIA, that's such a great program, is over, it's done. It could transform. So I want folks to sort of focus on that. And then finally, I would say on the issue of the Edison and the restoration of the positions. I didn't want to miss this point. I appreciate what Deputy Superintendent has done, and I also want to thank Commissioner Shepard for having the presence of mind in all these decisions we have to make to say, hey, wait a second, what about Edison? It has become the New East. I've said that myself many times. New East meaning they've got more students than they should have. We ought to, even in these restricted financial times, make sure they have the resources to do the tasks that we've asked them to do. They've become the largest secondary high school in the district. So again, I want to thank Commissioner Shepard and Deputy Superintendent Quick for attending to that suggestion made by Commissioner Shepard. I'm set, thanks.
So I just want to go back to the statement around making shifts and changes with executive directors to 2 directors, which is false, primarily because you are creating executive directors and director positions in the grants as new positions. And I don't care what the justification is for it. And I will again say, si yo empiezo a hablar español, ustedes no me van a entender. So you understand that when people are bilingual, that they absolutely need to have an opportunity to be heard and understood, and that we need a multiple language learner executive director. Because right now I just spoke Spanish and none of you, except maybe 1 or 2 people on this call, understood what I was saying. So my point is that, you know, my frustration and what I say I continuously fight is that we have one commissioner that brought up the director of arts, and that position was reinstated immediately. And the poll that this board did was ignored, but that position was restored like nothing. No conversations, no pushback from this administration. And it pisses me off. And you guys have no idea what it's like to be someone who comes from a different background, a different language, and the struggles that we already face in this district. We have failed ELL students for a number of years in this damn district. We are at a 20% graduation rate. And to cut it and say that 2 directors, a director of ESSO, which is a dated term, the state of New York does not even use the term ESSO to describe MLL students. It is so frustrating to me. And I'm telling you guys do what you guys need to do, but I will die on this and vote no. I will not support it. And I cannot wait till a new superintendent comes in and gets rid of certain individuals, and I will not be saying nothing about it. I promise you. We are letting administration push an agenda for a superintendent that has abandoned this damn district. I'm sorry, I'm not supporting it, and I will not be giving kudos and praises. When one commissioner spoke up last Thursday, that position was immediately reinstated. And I've been going through this from the very beginning that this budget dropped, opposing opposing this, and I should not have to oppose a position that serves MLL students in this entire district and all of our schools this damn hard to do the right thing. I'm done. I have nothing else to say. If you guys have other things to say, so be it.
Okay, I will take that as you're turning the gavel over to me.
Turning it over.
All right. We will vote on the budget. For those of you who don't know, we have scheduled to vote on the budget tomorrow. And at that point, we'll have a budget presumably for the 2021 school year. I would just remind folks, and even in our frustration, and there's a lot of things that people on this board and across the city do not have in this budget. And it sounds kind of cliche-ish, but this is not the end of our work. We will have a new superintendent. We will have the need to address issues that weren't addressed in this budget. And who knows, we may have additional resources. Don't forget, there is still a pending resolution that the administration is working on to identify savings from COVID closures. Our students did not go back to school. Our buses weren't driving people. Contractors and vendors weren't being paid and don't have to be paid for certain services. So the arguments that, for example, Commissioner LeBron made for restoration of certain positions, and some of them are persuasive arguments, we can revisit them. Tomorrow or Friday is another day. So I would ask folks to not look at this as just the one shot that we will have to make sure that this district gets what it needs. We will have other opportunities, but we'll take that vote tomorrow. But I did notice that Commissioner Shepard wanted to go into executive session, of course, to discuss, in all likelihood, a matter relating to the terms and conditions of a particular employee's employment. So I would ask for that motion. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Then moved by Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. That's Commissioner Adams. Thank you. All right. So we are going to go into executive. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? I take it there are no nays.
Aye.
So the ayes. Thank you, Vice President Elliott. I think we have enough ayes to go into executive session. For the public out there, only reason why we're doing this is the law doesn't allow us to discuss personnel matters in public. And once we finish up those discussions, we'll close our meeting from there because we don't have any business for which we would have to vote. So I look forward, my colleagues and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow night. That is the night of the budget vote. God bless and have a good evening. We'll go into executive session.